If you're a diehard Browns fan and love breaking down the game like we do, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a blitz. Kevin Stefanski is doing it again, and this time, Cleveland fans aren't sure whether to be excited, worried, or just exhausted. Coming out of the bye week, the Browns head coach has decided to hand over offensive play-calling duties to offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, marking the second consecutive season he's made such a move. For a coach whose identity has always been tied to his offensive mind, it's a decision that screams both humility and desperation. After 8 games of offensive misery, and misery is really the only word for it, Cleveland ranks 31st in total yards and 31st in EPA per play, barely edging out the Tennessee Titans for the honor of not being dead last. It's been ugly. The kind of ugly that makes even diehard fans hesitate before turning on the game on Sundays. The kind that makes every 3rd and long feel inevitable. The kind that turns every field goal into a small miracle. So, Stefanski's decision to step back from play calling isn't shocking. It's just complicated. To fully understand why this matters, you have to appreciate what Stefanski represents to this franchise. When he arrived, he was supposed to be the offensive guru who could finally maximize the Browns' talent and bring some modern creativity to a team that spent most of the past 2 decades stuck in the mud. For a brief moment, it worked. His first year, 2020, was magical, a playoff win, a balanced offense, and a sense that Cleveland had found its guy. But since then, the magic has slowly faded. Injuries, quarterback chaos, and inconsistency have chipped away at what once felt like a bright future. The offense has gone from efficient and clever to stale and predictable, and through it all, Stefanski has carried the reputation of being too rigid, too cautious, too unwilling to adapt when things go south. Now, with another sluggish start and little hope of adding reinforcements before 2025, Stefanski has decided to shake things up by putting Tommy Rees in charge of calling plays. Rees, for those who might not know, is young, energetic, and aggressive by nature. He's a coach who believes in taking chances, stretching the field, and trusting his quarterback to make plays, even when that means living with some mistakes. And maybe that's exactly what the Browns need right now. Because let's face it, playing it safe hasn't worked. The offense has been allergic to big plays, allergic to rhythm, allergic to fun. Every drive feels like a slog through quicksand, with a couple of short completions followed by a predictable run up the middle and then, inevitably, a punt. It's not that the players aren't trying. It's that the scheme has felt lifeless. Rees might be able to inject some much-needed adrenaline into this group. Interestingly, this time Stefanski's decision doesn't coincide with a quarterback switch. Dillon Gabriel remains the starter, even though his performances haven't exactly inspired confidence. Gabriel has had flashes, a couple of sharp throws here and there, moments where you can see why the Browns wanted to give him a shot. But overall, the offense hasn't clicked under his watch. Still, Shedeur Sanders' lingering back injury leaves Cleveland with little choice. And truthfully, even if Sanders were fully healthy, it's hard to imagine the coaching staff making another change so soon. For starts into Gabriel's run, there's still time to see if he can settle in with Rees calling the shots. Maybe a different voice in his ear will make a difference. Maybe Rees will find ways to simplify the reads, use motion more creatively, or find matchups that actually benefit Cleveland's receivers instead of putting them in impossible situations. Inside the locker room, the mood seems cautiously supportive. Browns guard Wyatt Teller, one of the team's emotional leaders, spoke with the kind of measured optimism you expect from a veteran who's seen it all. He said he trusts Stefanski and believes in what the coach is trying to do, but he also understands why something had to change. When your offense ranks near the bottom of the league and your defense is doing everything possible to keep games close, you can't just keep doing the same thing and hope for a miracle. Teller's comments were telling, no pun intended, because they reflect how the locker room views Stefanski. There's still respect there. The players know he's smart, they know he cares, and they know he's trying to find solutions. But there's also an unspoken acknowledgement that whatever they've been doing isn't working. The question, of course, is what this move means for Stefanski's job security. On one hand, it could be seen as a sign of confidence, a coach who's comfortable enough in his position to delegate, to empower his staff, to recognize that something needs to change. On the other hand, it could just as easily be interpreted as a desperate attempt to shake things up before it's too late. After all, Giving up play calling 2 years in a row isn't exactly normal behavior for an offensive-minded head coach. If the Browns' offense suddenly takes off under Rees, it might raise uncomfortable questions about why Stefanski couldn't make it work himself. If it doesn't improve, well, the head coach is still the one who will have to answer for it. That's the tightrope Stefanski is walking right now. Coaching in the NFL is as much about perception as it is about results. And perception around the league is that Cleveland's offense has been an anchor holding this team back. The defense, led by Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, has been phenomenal at times, keeping opponents in check and giving the Browns a fighting chance week after week. But you can only ask your defense to carry so much. Eventually, the offense has to contribute, and that just hasn't happened. There's no rhythm, no identity, no spark. When you watch the Browns right now, it feels like every yard is earned through sheer willpower instead of design. That's not sustainable. Tommy Rees might not be a miracle worker, but he brings a different energy to the table. He's known for blending modern concepts with old-school aggressiveness, using tempo to create mismatches, and keeping defenses guessing. Expect to see more motion, more play action, more attempts to get the ball in space to players who can actually make something happen after the catch. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about finally getting the car moving. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the Browns need to salvage what's left of this season. But there's another layer to this story, the human one. Stefanski has always come across as calm, calculated, maybe even a little robotic. He doesn't rant on the sidelines, he doesn't throw players under the bus, and he rarely shows frustration publicly. That demeanor has earned him respect in some circles and criticism in others. Some fans love his steady hand. Others see it as a lack of fire. But stepping back from play calling, twice in 2 years, suggests there's more going on beneath the surface. Maybe he's tired of carrying the weight of every offensive failure. Maybe he's genuinely trying to empower his coaching staff and evolve as a leader. Or maybe he's simply out of answers and hoping that someone else, anyone else, can find the spark he's been missing. What makes this move fascinating is that the Browns' offense probably won't look radically different overnight. These decisions aren't made in a vacuum. The entire offensive staff contributes to game plans, and Stefanski will still be heavily involved in designing the weekly approach. But what could change is the tone. Rees might be more willing to take risks, more comfortable pushing the envelope on third down or calling deep shots when the defense least expects it. He might be more aggressive in the red zone, where Cleveland has been dreadful this year. Sometimes, all it takes is a shift in mindset to breathe life into an offense that's been sleepwalking. Still, it's hard to shake the sense that this is a pivotal moment for Stefanski's tenure. If this works, he'll be praised for his humility and adaptability. If it doesn't, his seat will get a lot hotter. The NFL isn't kind to coaches who lose their offensive identity, and right now, Stefanski is teetering on that edge. The irony is that by giving up control, he might actually save himself, or doom himself, depending on how these next few weeks unfold. For now, all eyes turn to Week 10 against the New York Jets. It's not just another game. It's a test of whether this new structure can spark something meaningful. The Jets' defense is tough, opportunistic, and physical, exactly the kind of opponent that can expose a shaky offensive line and an unsteady quarterback. If Rees can find a way to move the ball against that unit, the Browns might just start believing again. If not, the chorus of doubt surrounding Stefanski will only grow louder. At its core, this story isn't just about a play-calling change. It's about identity, leadership, and the never-ending struggle to adapt in a league that punishes stagnation. Kevin Stefanski has built a reputation as a thoughtful, detail-oriented coach who believes in process over panic. But the NFL doesn't wait for anyone. When your offense ranks near the bottom of every major category, when fans start questioning whether you've lost your touch, and when even your own players admit something has to change, sometimes the only move left is the one that shows you're willing to evolve. Stefanski has made that move. Now the question is whether it's enough. Cleveland has been here before, so close to turning the corner, only to stall at the worst possible moment. Maybe this is the jolt they've been waiting for. Maybe Tommy Rees brings the spark. Or maybe this is just another chapter in the ongoing saga of a team that can't quite get out of its own way. Either way, it's going to be fascinating to watch it unfold. Because in the NFL, change is always risky. But sometimes, doing nothing is even riskier. And Kevin Stefanski, for better or worse, Just bet his future on that truth. Enjoying the content so far? Smash that like button and drop your take in the comments. We want to hear what you think about the Browns this season. You know those moments in sports when everything feels like it's about to explode? When the tension has been building for so long that you can practically feel it through the screen. Well, that's exactly what's happening right now in Cleveland, because Jimmy HASLAM, the owner of the Browns, has finally snapped. According to sources close to the organization, and yeah, it's still early, still developing, HASLAM has reportedly made the decision that so many fans have been whispering about for weeks, maybe even months. Kevin Stefanski, the head coach who once looked like the savior of this franchise, is officially out. And the way it's being talked about, the message from HASLAM couldn't have been clearer. The man allegedly looked right into the faces of his inner circle and said, "I can't waste any more time." Those 6 words hit harder than any sack, harder than any missed field goal. Because for the Browns, time has been their cruelest enemy. Decades of rebuilds, false hope, and seasons that start with optimism and end with heartbreak. And now, it looks like the owner has finally lost patience. Let's rewind a little bit, because to really understand how he got here, you've got to look back at the entire Stefanski era. When he came in, Kevin Stefanski was hailed as the adult in the room. After years of dysfunction, coaching carousels, and quarterback controversies, the Browns finally had a guy who looked like he could build something stable. In 2020, he led the team to the playoffs. And that win over the Steelers was one of those moments that Browns fans will never forget. Baker Mayfield was firing on all cylinders. The running game was electric with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And for the first time in forever, Cleveland looked like it belonged. People were talking about Stefanski as Coach of the Year material. And guess what? He actually won it. That was supposed to be the turning point, the start of something lasting. But if you follow the Browns, you know how this story usually goes. The high never lasts. What's been eating away at this team ever since that breakout year is a slow, painful erosion of identity. The Browns built themselves on toughness, on running the football, on controlling the clock and letting their defense dictate the game. But as the roster changed, as the pressure mounted, and especially after the Deshaun Watson trade, things got complicated. HASLAM bet everything, and I mean everything, on Watson. $230 million guaranteed, the most controversial deal in NFL history, tied to a player who hadn't played in over a year. That move was supposed to elevate the Browns from interesting to elite. Instead, it's been chaos. Injuries, suspensions, inconsistency. And through it all, Stefanski trying to juggle egos, media backlash, and fan expectations that just kept getting louder. So when HASLAM reportedly dropped that bombshell statement, "I can't waste any more time," it wasn't just about losing games. It was about losing belief. And you can sense the frustration in every corner of the city. Cleveland fans have stuck with this team through everything. They've seen jersey after jersey of failed quarterbacks, coaches come and go, front office reshuffles, you name it. But they believe that Stefanski might be different. He was calm, analytical, a guy who didn't yell or point fingers. But maybe, and this is what's being whispered around league circles right now, maybe that calmness turned into complacency. Maybe what the Browns needed wasn't a steady hand, but a spark. Because HASLAM, say what you want about him, is not a man who likes waiting. He's aggressive, impulsive, sometimes even reckless with his decisions, but he's never been one to sit still. And apparently, after another disappointing stretch where the Browns looked completely lost on offense, the owner decided he had seen enough. No more excuses. No more "we're almost there." The message was clear: if you're not producing, you're gone. The timing of this rumored firing couldn't be more dramatic. The Browns are sitting in that weird zone, not terrible, not great. And that's the kind of mediocrity that drives owners insane. You can rebuild from failure. You can inspire hope with a total collapse. But when you're stuck in the middle, when you're just good enough to compete but not good enough to win, that's when frustration boils over. People close to HASLAM say he's been visibly agitated during games, pacing, shaking his head, even making calls from his suite mid-game. The man's competitive, and with all the money he's poured into this team, the idea of another wasted season is unbearable. Insiders say he started losing faith in Stefanski after multiple clock management errors, predictable play calling, and a sense that the team wasn't improving, especially on offense, which, let's be real, has been painfully inconsistent. What's even more fascinating here is how quiet Stefanski himself has been. No official statement, no post-game outburst, no visible tension, at least not on the surface. That's always been his style. Poker-faced, stoic, almost robotic. But behind closed doors, the vibe reportedly shifted weeks ago. Players started noticing shorter tempers, sharper meetings, a different tone. HASLAM, on the other hand, was said to be holding private conversations with key veterans, gauging the locker room. And if those conversations went the way people suspect, that might have sealed Stefanski's fate. Because when ownership feels like the locker room isn't responding to the coach anymore, that's usually the end. Add in the fact that the AFC North is a meat grinder this year. The Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers all gunning for playoff spots, and you can see why the owner felt the pressure. The Browns can't afford to keep being the team that's almost there. They've been almost there for 30 years. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Deshaun Watson. If Stefanski's firing is confirmed, it's impossible to separate it from the Watson situation. HASLAM staked his reputation on that trade, and whether you agree with it or not, it was a move that put the Browns under a microscope. Stefanski was expected to build an offense around Watson's unique skill set, but with injuries and off-field distractions, that vision never materialized. And when your quarterback isn't living up to expectations, especially when he's making $230 million guaranteed, someone has to take the fall. It's rarely the quarterback in that situation. The coach almost always pays the price. And deep down, I think everyone saw this coming. The chemistry was never really there. Watson looked lost at times, Stefanski seemed frustrated but restrained, and HASLAM? He just wanted results. Fast. There's also a growing sense that HASLAM might be looking for a name, a splash hire, someone who can reset the entire culture of the organization. We're hearing whispers about veteran coaches being eyed, maybe even some current coordinators from powerhouse teams who've been waiting for their shot. The Browns have a talented roster. That's the frustrating part. The defense, when healthy, can go toe-to-toe with anyone. Myles Garrett is a force of nature. The offensive line, while banged up, is still solid. The pieces are there. So in HASLAM's mind, if the results aren't matching the talent, then the problem has to be leadership. And that's why this move, while shocking, almost feels inevitable. For fans, though, it's another gut punch. Another chapter in a saga. That feels never-ending. You can almost hear the collective sigh of Cleveland tonight. Because even if Stefanski wasn't perfect, even if his play calling drove people crazy, he brought something that this franchise desperately needed, a sense of order. And now, with his departure, that sense of stability might be gone again. The Browns will be starting over. Again, different year, same feeling. But in the unpredictable world of the NFL, maybe that's exactly what HASLAM wants, chaos that leads to change. Sometimes, you have to burn everything down before you can rebuild it right. Or at least, that's what ownership always says. And yet, there's this lingering question that nobody can quite answer. Was this really about winning, or was it about control? HASLAM has always been a hands-on owner, maybe too hands-on. Coaches come to Cleveland and talk about collaboration, but behind the scenes, the owner's influence looms large. Some insiders suggest that Stefanski's calm demeanor clashed with HASLAM's urgency, that their relationship had been quietly deteriorating for months. If that's true, then this firing was less about excess and OS and more about power. And in the NFL, that's often how it goes. It's not just about football, it's about politics, perception, and who gets to steer the ship. Either way, one thing's for sure, this is going to send shockwaves through the league. Because for all the criticism, Stefanski will have options. He's still young, still respected, still seen as one of the sharper offensive minds in football. Teams will line up for interviews. But for Cleveland, the question becomes, what now? How many times can you hit the reset button before it finally sticks? HASLAM's declaration, "I can't waste any more time," may sound powerful, but in a city that's been waiting for a Super Bowl for generations, time is the one thing that's already been wasted over and over again. So buckle up, Cleveland. The storm has arrived again. And this time, it feels different, louder, heavier, more final. Jimmy HASLAM has made his move. The rumors are spreading like wildfire, and the Browns are officially back in the spotlight. Not for a playoff run, not for a miracle comeback, but for yet another dramatic turn in their never-ending saga. And as always, The rest of the football world is watching, shaking its head, and wondering if maybe, just maybe, this will finally be the move that changes everything. Or if it's just another chapter in the longest story of frustration in the NFL. Thanks for riding with us on another Browns Blitz. If you liked the video, share it with a fellow fan, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you're always part of the Dawg Pound conversation. Go Browns!